Hi, I'm Jonathan McDonald from Province Sports, here with longtime columnist Tony Gallagher. Tony, the Canucks are about to head out on their longest road trip of the season. A 7-gamer starts Friday night in Columbus. I'm curious about one thing here, Tony, which is normally if a mediocre team heads out for 7 games on the road, that could be the kiss of death. We thought these Canucks were going to be mediocre. Instead, they're fighting for top spot in the NHL. What do you think of their chances here?
Well, so far they've been very good on the road and in many cases against very good opposition. A few things I like about this road trip. One, they left early, which is nice. You got an extra day to acclimatize. Two, they run into a team right off the bat that's had a ton of injuries in Columbus. So that's the one you want to focus on. Get this thing off to a good start. Play with house money. The first 5 games, superbly spaced. Game, day off, early game, day off, late game, and then at the end, when they get into the Canadian component, it gets kind of busy, only 1 back-to-back, and then you have that sacrificial, what appears to be almost certain loss to Montreal at the end of a 7-gamer on a Tuesday night. You're just looking to get home. Usually that's when they lose. But remember last year when they had that game at the end of their longest trip in St. Louis, which looked like they were going to be exterminated like ants. Eddie Lack stands on his head and they get that game. So you never really know what's going to happen. But I mean, you can't ask for a nicer 7-game Eastern trip given the spacing and really not many lights out high quality opponents.
Okay, Tony, so they start with Columbus, Detroit, Washington, and Pittsburgh. But I wanted to ask you about the Canadian teams because every year we're told that essentially a Canadian team is not going to win the Stanley Cup again. So they play Toronto.
Well, they haven't under the Gary Bettman regime, so naturally we're
Shock
thinking
of
that
shocks,
way.
shock of shocks.
I know, I'm appalled and shocked.
Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, those are the final 3 games of this trip. Tell me quickly, obviously Montreal seems to stand out among those 3.
Absolutely it is. It stands out as the most difficult because Montreal is easily the best team of those 3. And it comes at the end of the 7-gamer when they're just looking to get home. But look at the first 2 opponents, Ottawa and Toronto. Neither of them have any structure particularly. So that means scoring chances. And more specifically, it means scoring chances for the Sedins because it's against those teams that they really flourish. They break teams down like that and generate chance after chance after chance. And if Verbata is finishing, then they could get on the board. The Sedins get on the board, obviously your chances of winning are vastly improved. It's against the really structured teams where they seem to have trouble. There's a lot of non-structured teams on this trip. Pittsburgh, Columbus, Detroit is pretty good, so they may struggle there. I mean, if that's going to be the way the trip breaks down, the Sedins, even though it's getting past the 25-game mark, which is crucial for them, that's when they're going to start to struggle. But on this trip, they should be okay.
Okay, last question, Tony. The Canucks fan base has developed a reputation, certainly over the last several years, while the Canucks have been a very good team. In your opinion, between the Toronto fan base and the Montreal fan base, which is the one that most approaches the insanity we see here?
Oh, definitely Toronto, I would say. Montreal's had a little bit too much success to be insane. They just look at it as a little bit of a drought in between our next cup, which is inevitable, whereas now Leaf fans are thinking, will the cup ever return? And of course, here in Vancouver, we know it's never coming. So, at least under the Bettman regime. So, you know, I think Vancouver fans are most insane, followed quickly by Toronto fans, and Montreal as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're extremely passionate in Montreal, but they're way down the pecking order. And fans in Ottawa, they're just flat out too far away from the rink to be much fans at all. Sorry, Ottawa.
Folks, that's Tony telling you, probably tongue-in-cheek, maybe tongue-in-cheek, the Stanley Cup's never coming to Vancouver. Tony, thank you.
Not in my lifetime. I hope it will come one of these days, and Gary can't live forever.
Okay, read Tony Gallagher at provincesports.com.